Very much. Let's discuss all of this with the top Republican on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman Michael McCaul. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. So as you know, 3,000 U.S. troops will soon be shoring up key NATO allies in Eastern Europe. How far does this go potentially, from your perspective, to deter Putin?
Well, I think it's a step in the right direction, and I do applaud the administration for this. I think deterrence is really the key here, and I've been a critic of the administration for not showing enough deterrence, particularly the waiving of the Nord Stream 2 sanctions, which I think emboldened and empowered Putin to make this aggressive move that he's doing right now. But he needs to know, Mr. Putin needs to know, that there will be consequences, and the only way we can do that is to have a showing of force and deterrence. And in the Congress, we're looking at a very lethal aid package we could do very imminently to Ukraine, but also what sanctions could be triggered either before or after an invasion to show Mr. Putin that we're serious. But I do think the force protection at both the Poland and Romania is important, but I think the Baltic nations would welcome that as well. I talked to members from all three of those states today, and they would like to see more NATO troops there as well.
Well, as you know, 8,500 U.S. troops here in the U.S. are still on what's called this heightened alert to deploy to Europe if necessary. Do you want to see a NATO call up those additional troops right away and move them from the U.S. over to Eastern Europe?
Well, I do think that would be a move of deterrence that has been lacking. I always think weakness invites aggression, and that's an axiom we saw with Chamberlain, Hitler. This would be the largest invasion on the European continent since World War II, if in fact Mr. Putin decides to go forward with it. And I think we have to demonstrate that this will have consequences, and that would be a showing of force in my judgment. And I also, Wolf, as you know, I go back to the weakness projected in Afghanistan. I think it emboldened our adversaries, and I've had that in private briefings with people that know this issue very well. We've emboldened our adversaries, whether it be Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, and they're all testing this president right now.
Do you understand why, Congressman, after weeks of warning of a, quote, imminent Russian invasion, the White House is now retiring that word imminent?
I think President Zelensky doesn't like that talk. It does cause panic in his country. He doesn't want to see a mass evacuation. He's obviously worried about his economy as well. So I think the administration has sort of scaled that back. It's really important to note that this buildup of troops by Putin and Russia really started last March. The president was sitting on a $200 million package last November. He just released that to Ukraine. And again, I think if Congress could unify as a nation, as Americans behind Russian aggression, and send Ukraine that lethal aid and possibly some sanctions, I think that would be a really strong message to Mr. Putin.
What's your best assessment, Congressman, of if or when Russia will actually move into Ukraine? Again, they did it twice before, actually, because new satellite images show a very sharp increase in the Russian military buildup around Ukraine, even in recent days.
Well, I don't think we're going to have troops in Ukraine. They will be in our NATO allied countries. And, I think Putin has a lot of options here. I think the weakness projected has given him a lot of options at the table that he can take. There's a lot of speculation he could go to the Dnieper River, which is where all the Russian-speaking people are. It's just west or just east of Kiev. And I think one of the big plays here, though, Wolf, is energy. I think he wants to divide and weaken NATO, and he also wants to control the Black Sea, and that would be Mariupol port and Odessa. If he controls those ports, he controls the Black Sea. He already has his fleet in the Black Sea, which would control the energy. And that with Nord Stream 2 gives him tremendous leverage in the region.
The Republican Senator Josh Hawley wants President Biden to actually drop U.S. support for Ukraine, potentially eventually joining NATO. Does that make any sense to you at all?
No, I don't think that's the right move. We always want to allow countries the right to self-determination if they want to join NATO. And that's up for a vote for NATO. But we always champion democracy and freedom over oppression and tyranny and dictatorships. That's who we are as a country, as Americans. So I believe that would send exactly the wrong message, not only to Ukraine right now, who is obviously in a world of hurt, but it would send a really bad message to Mr. Putin, once again emboldening him that he can take this next step without any consequences.
Congressman Michael McCaul, thanks so much for